Hi, everybody. It's Michelle Hill, your legacy builder at Winning Proof, and I am here with another episode of Winning Proof Unscripted. Today is a really special day because I have Terraine Brown on the show with me on this episode. I have been a guest on Terraine's podcast, I think three times so far. And you know what? I want to talk to him, and I think it's going to be really valuable for you to just listen in on a conversation about mental health and relationships and whatever else we cover today. So I want to welcome you, Terraine. Thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It is an honor to be on your show because, as you mentioned, we've developed quite the relationship through each other's mutual professions. And here we are today. So thank you for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have you here. And what I want to start off with, sometimes I'll read a bio and sometimes that works, but for you, I want you to tell in your own words, since you're so eloquent. I want you to tell people who you are, where you hail from. I know you live in Canada, but a little bit of your history, and then we'll dive into some mental health and some relationship questions. But let viewers know, who is Terraine Brown?
Absolutely. So, as Michelle has so graciously introduced me, I am Terraine Brown. I am from Toronto, Canada. For those in the States, we are just north of you. For those who are across the ocean, I am just across the ocean of you. And I'm that kid that, if you remember that little skinny 100-pound kid in high school who couldn't get any girls, who had very few friends, I was that guy. And then I decided to make a change in my life and I started to ask questions that maybe some of us are hesitant to ask. And then I started to ask, okay, what makes the type of man that you want to be friends with? What makes the type of man that you want to be in a relationship with? And then I gathered all this information and I put it into that little computer brain of myself. And then out came this somewhat good looking man, but kind and generous. And here I am today helping others find love in the different ways that I found it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes, and I was that same one in high school. Couldn't get a date to the prom. Nobody nobody wanted to ask me. So I did not go to either one of my proms just because of the same thing. And yeah, along life, you do learn some things, right?
You do. Like I didn't go to my prom in high school. That's how bad it was because I didn't think that I remember back then, Michelle, like for you to go somewhere alone was like scary. So I didn't want to go to
Yeah.
the prom by myself, right? So in elementary school, which was like grade eight, so I was like 14, right? When puberty hit and everything is raging and rampaging within our bodies, I actually had two dates. There was a girl that I was dating at the time. We planned to go to prom together. And then when that ended a couple of months before the prom, I was with someone else. So I either had to honor my word to my ex or go with my current one. And what made this story kind of scary is that I didn't know that they were actually good friends. Ooh, so here I am dating a good friend of my ex unintentionally, but they knew. So they kind of did a rock, paper, scissors who can get me as a prom date, but I ended up not going with either. So I dodged that drama.
Oh my gosh. That's really good. You know, I don't think I had anybody, vying for my attention. So, but I was that 100-pound weakling. I had hair down to my knees. I looked like Cousin It because I was so little and I had all this hair. So it's something. So what kind of fast forward and we're going to talk about your podcast a little later, but what got you interested originally in mental health and that whole arena?
Well, I had a difficult time around when I entered high school. So that was like grade, what? That was 15, 16 years old. So when I was a freshman, it was a little bit of a struggle just because I realized that my parents didn't have the best relationship.
Mm.
I realized that I was struggling finding the type of relationship I wanted, whether it was romantic, personal, or even professional to a degree. So I had to understand why I felt the way I did why I thought the way I was thinking, and why I was not doing what I needed to get done. So I began to realize that I was having an identity crisis. I didn't know who I was or how I fit into this world. Outside of the labels as a black male, well, black heterosexual male, that's
Mhm.
all I had, right? So, I had to figure out, okay, I know what it is to be black. I know what it is to be a man. I know what it is to like women, but do I understand how that plays out in the world? So, what I did is that I went through a transformation. Once I understood that I had to figure out my place in the world, I
Mhm.
began to grieve what I had to leave behind. And what
Mhm.
I had to leave behind was a stereotypical, very aggressive, very alpha, I am man, hear me roar, and
Yeah.
say, okay, yeah, beating my chest wherever I went and just trying to exert manliness in so many ways that today we call toxic, right? You want to show your muscles, you want to try to assert yourself in ways that aren't necessarily productive. So once I began to understand that, and I was fortunate, it was such a young age, I avoided the gangs, I avoided the drama, and I just said, I need to work on me. And that's essentially what I did to help maintain my mental fitness.
Well, that is remarkable to have that realization at that young age, as you say, because a lot of the rest of us don't find that until we're in our 40s and beyond. And it's never too late to find out who you are, but that was a huge advantage for you to find that, who you were and to it sounds like just really embrace it, but I want to kind of capitalize on what you said. You had to grieve the loss. You had to grieve that. What does that mean exactly?
Well, for me, I had to stop blaming my circumstances. So I had to stop saying that, okay, I grew up poor, my parents don't get along, my parents are divorced.
Yeah,
I had to let go of that identity because that identity was serving no one,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
at that point, it made me a project to other people, right? Let
yeah.
me fix Terraine because Terraine grew up poor. Let me fix Terraine because he doesn't have a good relationship with his mother and father. Let me fix Terraine because his parents don't have a good marriage. So once I began to let go of that person, the grieving process is a little bit different, but very similar to when someone passes away, right? Because I looked at it and I was like, wow, I can't use this as a crutch anymore. I can't say I'm yelling at you because I'm losing this part of me.
Mhm.
Or better yet, Michelle, I'm going to mistreat you because I'm going through something. So now it's me justifying bad behavior. So I could cheat on you because I didn't see a healthy relationship. I could abuse you because I saw it in the home. I can do drugs and alcohol because I saw it around me. This is how people latch on to the victimhood identity. And then once you break free, you begin to grieve it because now, instead of you saying, I'm not as good a person as I can be because of X, it's now your thinking is, I'm not a good person because I choose not to be a good person. And that was a big step forward for me.
Oh yeah, that and people I think a lot of times don't realize, oh, you have a choice. You aren't that victim. You have a choice on whether you're going to live in victory or in that personal development world, a just an empowered person that's always moving forward, or like, no, I can't, and your shoulders are up here. You're like, I can't do that because of. So once you realize that and once you grieve that, the changes come instantly, like overnight, or was it a process?
It took some time. You know what happened instantly was that people stopped being my friend. That
Interesting.
happened. Yeah, that happened almost instantly. The reason why that happened is because my circle of friends at that time were very similar to me in background and thought process. Once my thought process shifted and I want to be successful, I became the enemy. Instead of one of us, it was, oh, you're one of them. You're
Yeah.
one of the people that's oppressing us. So
Wow.
as I was going through the process of changing myself, now I have another identity that I lost. It's the identity that I had with my friends. I was a cool guy, right? Now you're that jackass that thinks you're so much better than everyone else. So
Mhm.
one thing that turned out to be a blessing was that I had a really good relationship with teachers because I love to read books.
Okay.
And the teachers always looked out for me, especially my English teacher. So she was someone that really pushed for me not to go to a school in my area, but to go to out of town, as they would call it.
Okay.
So once I started to be around people who are now thinking the way I was thinking, I wasn't alone anymore. I didn't
Yes.
feel lonely, right? So now my identity began to change. It began to shift. It wasn't that I was all of a sudden this bougie kid who's still poor, right? Still wearing hand me downs, right? I was someone that, okay, I want to be better because I've seen the bottom,
Hmm.
right? But now I got a taste of the top. So I want to get that. So it
Yeah.
was a process of me finding myself and finding that journey. But I began to realize very quickly that the car that I was driving on this journey, it started off with 5 or 6 people. And then all of a sudden, it was just me and a passenger.
Yes. Yes. And with your newfound, we'll say newfound set of friends and friends that thought like you, did you find a lot stronger community to, and I won't say attach to, but to connect with? Could you connect on a deeper level? Because when you're around people who don't have any interest in moving forward, or they're comfortable with the old you. They're comfortable with the old Terraine because that suits their needs and it suits their mindset. But were you able to connect on deeper levels with the people that you were finding thought like you?
Well, change brings out the insecurity of in a lot of people,
Yes.
right? Because once you begin to change, it's now not only a mirror that's reflecting back onto you, it's a mirror that's reflecting back onto them. A lot of people walk around through life not looking in the mirror. So, what I understood was that my circle of friends now, they were people that were very supportive. And I think what happens sometimes, Michelle, is growing up because your family in general usually looks like you, same skin color as you, same religion as you, same culture, same language. I grew up around, there's a certain point in my life when I was right before I was making this decision,
Mhm.
the people around me look like me, walk like me, have the same hair texture as me, right? Once I went to this school, instead of people being around me based on the color of their skin, it was a color of their character,
Wow.
which
That's
was
big.
big.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
When I graduated school, I was the only person in my graduating class that was black and didn't have a child.
Wow.
Big step, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So when you have a child in that situation so young, 16, 17 years old, you're essentially a child raising a child. Your life is so much more different
Yes.
before than it is going to be afterwards. So the color of the person's character, I learned very quickly because I got fierce backlash in my high school years from
Yeah.
thinking this way. But those who looked at me as a person,
Yeah.
right? They didn't look at me as the identity that I was shedding. They looked at me as the identity that I grew, that I groomed, that I cultivated, that I was an architect of. So that's where the community was so much better. And I learned so much. I remember this guy, and I use skin color just because it's so important in this example.
Hmm.
There's this guy I used to work with, white guy, skinny guy. He reminded me of me back in the day, just a white version, right? Short hair, nerdy, everything. And I was leaving the job because I was moving on to bigger and better things. And he said, Terraine, I really like what you've done. And he gave me this book. And he said, this book is very important to me and I want you to have it. Michelle, this book was the autobiography of Malcolm X.
I've
Now,
read
here I
it.
am. You read it, right? Here I
Yes.
am given this book that is very pro-black,
And it's very thick too.
very
It's
thick.
not an easy read.
It's not an easy read by a nerdy white guy. Right? Like just visualize that, everyone. You would not think that he has that book, but that book meant so much to him because it made him understand
Yeah.
different things of different people. And when he gave me that book, I knew how much it meant to me. And when I read that book, I can see why he gave it to me. That book is actually on my bookshelf right now.
Mine
That is the
too.
power. Yeah, that is the power of community. And that's why I always, always cherish what people have done for me, regardless of their religious background, their culture, or the color of their skin.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And help and support and affirmation come from all different directions. And to me, in the past workplaces that I've worked in, I loved the ones that were wildly diverse, where at one point I worked in I guess it was aerospace, and I supported the director of operations and 30 people in the sales and marketing department. And you had black and white and Asian and Indian, and it was just a beautiful, cohesive workplace. And it was awesome. So I just think, and they were so supportive of me. And the boss, when I interview, he goes, "The woman before you was here 20 years, very well loved. You have some big shoes to fill." And before I got downsized, and a year and a half later, they felt that way about me. I was showered with gifts on back then it was Secretary's Day. Now it's more politically correct Admin Assistance Day. But it was, all that. And so it was just a wonderful experience with that. And everybody, you have a course in that size, a Debbie Downer or the Eeyore or something like that. That's always going to be workplace situations. But for the most part, they were just affirming, supportive, loving, and this was a workplace, you know? And so I really appreciate that you have found that support in no matter what it looks like, it's there. And you have to, do you think, okay, so here's a question. Do you think you have to be looking for it, or does it just happen to you by magic?
I think a lot of things happen. What I think, to answer your question, answer directly. I think it happens when it's supposed to happen. And by that, I mean that we don't have to look for it, it finds us.
Yes.
So I'll give you an example. You could be going through your life and something is placed in your life. You have a choice.
Mhm.
You either ignore it or understand it,
Ooh, yeah.
right? A lot of people will ignore it. So you'll have someone that come into your life and they'll say, "Oh my God, you're so good looking and I love you," and things like that. You can be like, "Oh my God, Michelle, look at this person. She's so nice to me." But then the question should be is understand why this person is paying you so much compliments and understand why it's happening at that point in time. And you may take a step back and be like, you know what? I came out of a toxic relationship where the person didn't shower me with any compliments. This
Yeah.
person is doing that now, right? So why is that person doing this? Is that person doing it because they're genuine? Most likely they are.
Mhm.
Or is this life showing you that, hey, this is the reason why you find yourself in destructive and dysfunctional relationships, because every time someone tells you that you're good looking or you're pretty, you accept them without any vetting.
Yes.
That's right. That's what I had to do in my life. I had to say that there isn't a prerequisite to the type of friendship I want that's based on the color of the person's skin or their culture. It's, do you have good intentions? Yes. Do you have good aspirations? Yes. Do you have good ambitions? Yes. Do you want to build people up? Yes. Okay, let's be friends.
Mhm.
Black, white, pink, purple, green.
Yes.
I don't care, right? But I think what happens with a lot of people is that there's this thing called identity foreclosure, where some people is that they're told their grandparents did it, their parents did it, they did it, their children are going to do it, their grandchildren's going to do it. Meaning that I'm a Christian, Republican, blue collar. I'm not going to be anything else, right?
Yeah, it's
This, right?
generational.
It's
It's
generational.
Mhm.
Or I'm woke, I'm liberal, I have multicolor hair, and nothing applies to me because I'm not going to be part of any subgroup, even though I just put myself into three subgroups.
Yes.
So I think people have to understand that you can be different in so many ways, but still the same in so many ways. And once you figure that out, you'd be surprised that, hey, you know what? I don't really care what you look like and all that other stuff. I'm going to judge you on what I said before, and it's called the color of the person's character. And that's how you know the person's being put into your path when you judge them by that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the title of your book, if you ever write one, is The Color of Your Character. Because that's such an identifying thing, to just really judge that. Because me living in North Carolina, there is such a dividing line, racial dividing line. It's like they're living in the past and in a war, if you know what I mean. And there's such lines, especially when you get in the smaller towns, and it's still very, very segregated. And so it just always bothers me, but people don't advance to that, the color of your character. They stay in, like you said, the systemic, I'm this, and this, and ain't nobody gonna change me.
Yeah, Michelle, like if you look at the past is very comfortable.
It is, yes.
It is, right? Like
Yeah.
I recently got a new bed,
Okay.
and I had an old bed. I must have had this bed for how long have I had this house now? 10, 15 years.
Okay, yes.
Right? The bed is old, the bed was older than my house. Right? But there's a certain sense of comfort and familiarity with this bed.
Yes.
Right? But Michelle, I used to wake up sore hip, sore back,
Mhm.
and that is a perfect analogy for the past. It's comfortable, but it's destroying you day after day, the more you're a part of it. And I didn't realize, I understood the pain that this old bed was causing me. But
Yes.
you know, when I realized to the degree when I got a new bed,
Yes.
no more pain. Now, as soon as I lay in that bed, I'm out like a newborn,
Oh my gosh.
right? I love it. I absolutely love it. And that's what the past is for a lot of people. A lot of people's like,
Yeah.
you know what, I'm comfortable in my past. You know, the past I know. But once you show them something new, goes back to what I mentioned, right? Either you can ignore it or choose to understand it. And when that new comes into your life, that's where you have to be like, okay, this is actually for my benefit. Like go of the past, because a lot of times the reason why we stay in the past, not necessarily only because of ourselves, it's because of another person, a peer group,
Yeah.
a friend group.
Mhm. Yeah. In a familial situation, that's families have a hierarchy of power. They have a hierarchy of who is liked and who is the scapegoat. I personally, in my nuclear family, was the scapegoat. And, my sibling, younger sibling, was the princess, and all that. So I experienced that and have a lot of, trauma kind of based on that, but it made now in today's world, I'm just so much stronger because of it, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But my point is, when you have those systems of, like you said, friends and even coworkers or whatever, but it's like when you act new in a new way, when you have new behaviors and a new mindset, they don't see you like that. You're still little Terraine or little Michelle, or they view you as they saw you as a child. And they can't relate to you as a grown up, mature, developed human being. So, how does that work in relationships when people just refuse to see you and they're living in the past and they refuse to see you in your developed self?
Well, that's the issue when it comes to that type of relationship. There's some people, their identity of you is always going to be that 8-year-old,
Hmm.
right? You can be 80 years old, right? Like you hear
Yes.
parents say that, oh, my child is coming over. And then you see this 40-year-old man 6 foot, you're like child.
Exactly.
Right? But in their mind, your identity to them is always going to be a specific point in time. Just like how your friends, right? Their identity of you is going to be a specific
Mhm.
point in time.
Yes.
It's how they met you, maybe. It's how they
Mhm.
got comfortable with you. So what happens is that as human beings, we're supposed to be growing because you don't water dead plants, right? A plant that doesn't grow is dead, and we're plants. We need energy,
Mhm.
we need sunlight, we need watering, we need nurture, we
Yes.
need minerals, we need all these things, right?
Yes.
So what happens is that as you grow, your identity should grow with you. At the core, you're still that same person, right? Like a jackass is a jackass is a jackass every day of the week and twice on Sunday. They may change jobs, they may change outfits, but they're still that jackass in a nice suit. So what happens at that point is that those who can't let go of the identity of your former self,
Mhm.
they haven't grown. So
Yeah.
they're still stuck in a point of time. So to them, it's still 1999 before the year
Yeah.
2000. And they still want to party like it's 1999. Whereas here in 2025, this is where we understand is that, yes, I'm still Terraine. Yes, I'm still Michelle. 26 years have passed. If you think I'm still going to be walking the same way, talking the same way, my hip is still going to be as good, those days are over because not only has my body changed externally, my
Mhm.
body has changed internally. And
Good.
what happens with a lot of people who go through that process on the outside looking in is that they will latch on to your former identity to the point where they will reject the new
Yes.
you. And when they
Yes.
reject the new you, now you have a conflict because some people will stunt their growth to hold on to this person who refuses to grow up, Peter Pan, where
Yes.
some other people will continue to grow and outgrow this person. And now they have a decision to make. Either they replace this person, which is the right thing to do, or they try to soothe this person, which is validating and justifying bad behavior.
Mm.
And then when their new peer group begins to see what they're doing, there's a conflict between the old group, the person who's growing, and the new group. And the new group, what they're going to do is they're going to say that, you know what? We're going to keep our distance from you because over here we have peace. Over
Yes.
there we have chaos. Now you're getting rejected by the people who you want to be with while simultaneously rejecting the people you don't want to be with. What a bad situation to be in, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But if you're in a growth mindset, you break out of that. I mean, again, it comes down to decision. You have to make that decision. Where do you want to be placed? Where do you want to be? Do you want to placate the people who haven't grown because they're comfortable, because maybe they're family members, maybe they're longtime friends that, of 20 plus years or whatever. And, it just comes down to a choice. What do you want to do and how do you want to move forward and not really care about, and I'm not saying not care about human beings and people, but you have to come to, I think, a point, and you can validate this or agree or disagree with it, but you come to a point where you have to say bye bye, or as they say, bye, Felicia, and just move on and get out of that, get unstuck from that, that flypaper that seeks to keep you entrapped. So, where does that, I mean, how hard is that for one thing? Because to me, it's not easy to break old patterns and really live in new patterns without wanting to go back to the familiar, if that makes sense. I kind of convoluted that around, but you know me well
So
enough to
I
answer it.
do. It's hard. It's hard. Like I'll give you a very recent example. This happened 2 days ago.
Perfect.
2 days ago, because a friend was calling me and because I know the husband and wife, the married couple.
Hmm.
She went over. They went over to visit a friend in Texas,
Okay.
and they visit the friend and everything was good. And then the friend started to drink a little bit. And this friend is chronically single and, the relationship is ending. So what happens is that the married couple identity now, for the most part, is that the identity is husband, wife, first and foremost, then father and mother, right? Very structured. And I speak to them all the time, and they're in therapy, and this is how they came to the structure. Not therapy because of the marriage, therapy because of their past trauma from their childhood. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this person now who they're visiting, their identity is what? Opposed
Yes.
to this. It conflicts. Healthy relationship sometimes brings out the insecurity in people who have unhealthy relationships. Identity versus identity, total opposites. So what happened in this case is that the friend started to physically attack the woman
Oh dear.
to the point where police were involved. And you know what some of the things that she was saying as she's fighting and punching this girl? She's like, I don't like you and your perfect marriage. I don't like you and your perfect husband. I don't like you and your perfect family. And when she's telling me this, because she had to flee to a hotel, and I told her,
Yeah.
here's the thing. When someone says something, there's two types of verbal abuse.
Mm-hmm.
There's the verbal abuse that is general, and you could probably dismiss and be like, hey, you know what? This person says that. I don't like your stupid couch. Right? You're like, yeah, okay, you know what? Yeah, maybe it's kind of stupid, but it's my couch. I love my couch.
Yes.
There's the other one where it's very specific. When it's very specific, it's in the person's mind for who knows how long. This came out because this is what the person thinks. The person doesn't like your marriage. You know what the person turned around and said as they're leaving? I hope your perfect husband cheats on you.
Yeah. Wow.
So I told her that's not the alcohol talking. That's the alcohol opening up the door to what she has always been thinking.
Yes, because it makes
That's
you
where
more, that and money make you more of who you already are. So
absolutely.
that came
She
out.
has a
Wow.
courage juice, right? She's amped up now,
Yeah.
right? She has the
Exactly.
the courage to say what she really wants to say. So I share that story because this is how you see the conflict between two people, whereas this person over here wants you the way that they want you,
Mm-hmm.
right? They want you imperfect. They
Yeah.
want you just like them or something very close.
Mm-hmm.
Once you reach the other side now, it's in direct opposition to what they are. Some people can handle it.
Yeah.
Some people can't handle it. Those who can't handle it, it festers. And when
Yes.
it festers, it grows, right? And an opportunity is always going to come out. This is why you have some friends, when someone else gets in a relationship and things are going well, they'll say something on social media. They'll make a
Yes.
comment here. They'll exclude them. All of a sudden, the person is no longer cool to hang out.
Yes.
This is how people do it. And let me tell you something, men handle these situations differently than women do. Women would
Absolutely.
petty, right? Like anyone
Yes.
has seen the movie Mean Girls, that's
Okay.
how women are.
Okay. I haven't seen that, but I know that it's like you
Yes.
know.
Isolation, reputation, destruction, right? That's how women do, right? Like a man, there'd be like a face-to-face confrontation in general, and then there'd be a conversation. Depending on the conversation go, maybe there's fisticuffs, maybe there's not, right? But the
Yeah.
impact is more short-term.
Mm-hmm.
Women will impact your reputation because in
Yeah.
general, women aren't as physically strong, right? So they
Yeah.
got to release it somehow. Reputation damage. This is what that woman is doing. Because now, in the couple's mindset, or at least in the woman's, when her husband goes out for work trips, what is he going to think now? The seed has been planted, right?
Mhm.
So the impact is very, very long term. It's very sinister in a lot of ways.
Yeah, very, very sinister. And I'm guessing they won't be going back to Texas anytime soon or ever.
Well, not to visit her. Texas is a beautiful place. Shout out to all my Texans,
Okay.
right? They can still
Yeah,
go
I
to
didn't mean
Texas.
Texas itself. I meant to that friend's house. Actually, I should have said that. There won't be going to visit her, and there's not any, oh, okay, it's okay. Like feelings.
No,
It's
no, no. Yeah,
There's
but the problem with that couple is that I told them that this isn't the first time that people have said this to you, and I asked them the
oh,
question, "Who's saying these things?" And they're
okay.
like, "I'm like, is it your married friends or your single friends?" Like, it's my single friends. Okay, is it
Yeah.
the ones who are having drama with their
Yes.
the father or the mother of the child? They're like, yes. I was like, here's the thing, you guys are very active on social media because you're thinking you're sharing joy by saying that, hey, I'm a happy family, I'm a happy marriage.
Yes.
I told them there's some people they don't want to see happiness online.
Exactly. Yes. It makes them seethe with that jealousy, and it really stems from insecurity. That's kind of the root. So, based on kind of our conversation, what we're talking about, how has your mindset affected your own dating life? Like how are you able to spot or I hate to say spy out, but spot healthy females that come into your life, or are your spidey senses up as far as, oh, nope, nope, narcissist, or nope, this or that? Are you more attuned to that now?
I am in my 20s because I was just figuring out. And remember, my teens and early 20s, no one wanted me, right? So in my mid 20s, it was like, whoever wants this can have it, right? I was like the king of first dates, and right, and the king of no second dates. But what I realized after asking the opposite sex questions, because I'm a big proponent of men and women talking to each other about this instead of men talking with men and women talking with women,
Yes, yes.
is that I identified what I wanted in my life consistently.
Mm,
And once I identified those three things, I always said there's five. Three external, sorry, three internal, two external. So what
okay.
do I mean by that? I mean
Yeah.
that, okay, so three are personality based and two are physical based. So I
Okay.
would say, let's say, for example, someone came to me, they said, and I said that to them, they're like, okay, I want someone that is healthy looking,
Mhm,
and I want someone that takes care of themselves physically,
mhm.
right? So for me personally, what I would say is that, okay, I want someone who's healthy looking and I want someone who dresses with class, doesn't show a lot of skin, not
Mhm.
heavy cleavage, not their butt crack showing, not their thong in the air, nothing like that,
Yes.
right? So that's two. So three is I want someone that is hardworking. I want someone that is inspiring. Like when I see them and think of them, I'm like, wow, look at this woman over there. She handles children with grace. Oh my God, look at that woman over there. She works hard because she wants to help people and provide. And the third one is that someone that has a future goal together, meaning that I can plan a future with them instead of it's like, well, I plan to just die by myself and work until I die. It's like, okay, well, why am I here? You don't really need
Yeah.
me at this point,
Good
right?
luck on that one.
Yeah. So those are the five things that I do. So that's how I began
Okay.
to weed people out because there's a time where once I became successful, I began to see things differently because I saw that people were leading with sex and leading with money.
Yeah.
So what happened is like I remember one person, she said that there's no one that could perform oral sex on you better than I can. I was like, oh, I was like, okay, can I like read that somewhere where, because you have to be like, how many people have you done it with where you can make that comparison, right? Like, is there a chart? Is there a
Uh,
resume? Is there a website where we can
Yeah.
log in and find that information? Another
And people
person
don't
said
think
that,
that deeply. People don't, I
no,
love what you're saying because people don't think that deeply. They just like, oh, really? Ooh.
they
They
don't.
surface. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, they don't, right? To your point, right? They don't
Yeah.
think about it because I think we all had a point in our life where we had to come to terms thinking, do I want a relationship that's basically sexual or do I want more? I'm not saying that everyone has had a relationship where it's only friends with benefits. I think everyone has had that conversation within themselves
Mhm.
because it's always been offered, right? And then some other people led with money. They would say that, well, I own my family has a house on 10 acres. Okay, good for your mother and your father. What do you have? Right? Too
Yes.
many people think their parents' house is their house. It is not.
Yeah.
So that's how
Yeah.
I understood what I wanted because I began to say that what are the five things I don't want? And then I just came up with the opposite. And here I am today.
that is awesome. And how is that, do you have a goal to be married? Do you want to be married? Do you want to have just a significant other? I mean, is that too personal of a question, or can I ask you that?
Oh, I'm an open book. Yeah. So I want to get married in my 20s. I want to get married very young. I was like, okay, go to graduate school, get married. And then the
Yeah.
person I was with, I was like, I can't marry this person because I used to call them Michelle and I used to hear violence in the background. And the funny thing is, people are like, oh my God, violence. What are the men doing? I was like, it wasn't the men. It was the three women. It was a mother and the two sisters.
Oh dear.
Fist fighting, furniture moving, put down that knife. And I'm like, put down that knife? I'm like, oh, I gotta go. But now I don't want to hear it because I don't want to be an accomplice to the situation. So I was like, I can't marry this person who thinks, violence is a way of soothing me. You know what I mean? Like,
No.
well, we have a disagreement. Shut up. I was like, shut up. Like, what do you mean? Like, we had a disagreement and I closed the door. It was in my parents' house at the time.
Uh,
And she kicked the door with such force, the door came off its hinges.
oh wow.
And I was like, oh my God, I got to buy back my parents' door because they can't come home and see a door missing. Right. So, anyways, that's a
Yeah.
story for another day. So, what I did is that I began to realize that it is difficult and it's not easy
Yeah.
to your point, right? But
Mhm.
I want people to understand that just like investments, just like a good job,
Mhm.
it is always difficult in the beginning,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
And there's going to be difficulty in the best marriages. If you're talking marriage, there's going to be ebbs and flows, just like there is in business, just like there is in life. There's going to be, it's not all going to be roses and, rose petal strewn paths. You just have to communicate and work together and, love unconditionally. But go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. And I still want to get married. It's just for me, like my religious upbringing has taught me that you get married to have children, to build a
Okay.
family crest. So
Okay.
that's where the conflict is for me
Uh,
because
yeah.
do I want to have children like that? I don't know. Um,
Okay.
my
Good
partner
point.
now, she doesn't want to have children because she has her own from a previous situation.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So they're grown and everything. So like I wouldn't be in a situation necessarily where I'm raising young children from another
Mhm.
person. That's
Yeah.
just my thing, right? So
Okay.
that's another thing on my list.
Yeah.
But I'm not opposed to dating someone who has children that are adults and they can take care of themselves. So what I do
Mhm.
is I would love to one day because I have a lot of respect and appreciation for marriage.
Mhm.
And I think marriage in its essence and the reason why and in its origins is a very beautiful thing. And I think that's what we need to get back to because marriage
Yeah.
is that you've earned the title to say that she's with you and he's with you. And then once you've earned that title, you're letting the world know that, hey, we have grown and healed ourselves so much that we want to declare to the world we are united as one. That is what marriage means to me. And that is something that I would love to get into.
Yeah. Okay. And I love that you are so clearly defined because I think you need to. It's not that today so many people are, yeah, they seem to like me. I like them. Okay. And they're wondering why it doesn't last, or it's like the first sign of conflict, then we're out of here. And it can't be like that. And so I like that. And what you said previously is that you have to have a united goal. You might have individual goals, you might have personal business goals, they might have that. You're supporting each other in those, but you have united goals as well. We want to accomplish A, B, and C together.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's like a farmer family, right?
Mhm.
Family of farmers. When they have children, they're likely raising their children to be what? Farmers.
Farmers. Yeah.
So at a young age, they understood the responsibility of farming the duties, the demands, the everything. They're raised that way,
Hmm.
right? So people want to be husband and wives. If they're not raised to be husband and wives, where are they going to find it? Goes back
Yes.
to what we said, right? Like a part of your
Yes.
identity. The
Yeah.
farmer, the farming family, the children being farmers is a part of their identity growing up. Whether they decide to be a farmer as an adult or not, that's totally different conversation. But it's a part of their identity because they grew up
Yeah.
in that. If someone grows up in a dysfunctional family, it's a part of their identity. So what is likely they're going to find? Dysfunction. It's their baseline.
Yes. There's no frame of reference. And
Absolutely.
that's really hard to find. And I have, had my own challenges with that. It's hard to find. I know what it looks like. I've seen it modeled, but I don't have my own personal frame of reference. My grandparents were married 62 years. So I have that. But they were grandparents, not parents, and all that. So not having that frame of reference does make it more challenging because when somebody enters your life and they're acting a certain way, good or bad, you say, is this normal? Is this right? This feels normal, but something about it doesn't feel normal. So you're really conflicted with that if you don't have that good frame of reference and you can see it modeled all day long. And you can even go to those people and say, hey, what are your top 5 secrets for a successful marriage? That's for them. That's their top 5 secrets, or, principles or whatever. That might not be the same 5 principles that make your marriage successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like if you give someone a choice, right? Let's say in the States and Canada, the average income across the board, regardless of your cultural background, is let's say 45,000.
Mhm.
High end 50,000. Let's use a nice round number, 50,000.
Okay.
So if every person who is single right now earns $50,000 alone, and they say that, okay, my life is all right. It's not the
Mhm.
best, it's not the worst, but I get
Yeah.
by. And if I want to go to a fancy restaurant, I can go maybe once every 2 months, whatever the case is, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Now, if you go to them, let's say you have 100 people earning 50,000. If you go to 100 people and you ask them, okay, I'm going to give you a relationship where the person is a decent person, they earned 50,000 just like you,
Mhm.
and you're going to continue your life like that, right? Decent person, nice, everything is across board. They have the similar traits as you, they earn 50,000.
Mhm.
Out of that 100 people, every single person should say yes to it, right? Because combined, it's 100,000 and everything is split between two people, right? So more money for each person. Now, why is it that you don't have 100 people out of 100 saying yes to that?
Yeah.
There's some people who will say no for a number of reasons. One of those reasons is like, well, why would I be with someone who's earning the same amount of money as me when I can just be alone? That doesn't make sense because you're
Mhm.
paying 100% of everything versus 50% of everything. Logically, you should be in a relationship, especially, I didn't say the person's an abuser. I said the person is decent like you, everything. Some of the people say that, well, I want to have this type of lifestyle. I was like, well, your partner is not supposed to provide you with a lifestyle that you can't obtain yourself,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
right? Right. And the reason why I give those two examples, because those
Yes.
are the top two you see online, and those two examples are tied to the identity of the person. What is that? The identity of the person when they're by themselves is strong, independent. I don't need no one.
I've heard that over and over
Right.
and over. Yes.
Exactly. So when you try to help them shed that identity, they're hesitant because they're holding on to it because that identity has got them where they've got them. Because previously, maybe they were living a life where their mother and their father couldn't provide. Maybe they were living life where there's a single parent and they saw the struggle.
Mhm.
Maybe they have yet to understand that you are better together than you are alone. Now, some people may listen to this and say that, well, Terraine, I'm happy alone. Fine, you're happy alone. You can be happier together,
Yeah.
right? Well, I don't know that type of happiness. Welcome to being an adult. An adult is waiting in the unknown, understanding that sometimes the other side is the better side, right? So I think that's where people struggle when it comes to wanting to get married or wanting to get into a long term relationship is that this person on the left, they have been that person for so long.
Yeah.
Now you ask him not only to give up that person, but to become a totally different person. Because that single person over there, you can't bring that single person identity into a marriage because now it's a union
Mhm.
of two people and you become one identity.
Yes. And I think that's what happens a lot of times that you have two long-term single people, especially in, my age range in the 60s, being in the 60s. It's just like we're so set in our ways. You come at it like, you better get with the program, Buster, or this isn't going to work. Or the man says, I just have to mold her and shape her into the way I live, and we'll be fine. And to me, that's a recipe for disaster because you can't have two single mentalities coming together
Yeah.
in a monogamous, healthy relationship. I don't know. That's just my thought about it.
Yeah. It's like the person who dates a stripper and when they're about to get married, can you stop stripping? Like you met this person stripping. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, there's so many complexities to relationships and dating and everything. And I know when I've been a guest on your podcast, we've talked about narcissistic relationships and we've talked about romance, deception, and that is another whole you know, subject that we've talked about on your podcast, but I want to talk about your podcast, Behind the Shades. How did you originally come up with a name, and how did you like get the bug to be a podcaster? Because you're really good at it. I mean, you're a wonderful host. And so tell me the little bit of the origins of that.
Honestly, it started off in church. I used to give Bible talks. I used to stand in front of the congregation, read parts of the Bible that was assigned to me. And I began to understand how much it impacted people on a positive level. So
Mhm.
what I did was then I started to volunteer a lot more. So I used to read books to kids. I used to work
Nice.
at what's it called, soup kitchens and things like that. I used to talk to people and I really enjoy talking to people.
Hmm.
And then one day I said, what if I were to do this full time? But before I did so, I was going through a little bit of a transformation of myself because I didn't know how to do this. So I reached out to some of my friends at that time. Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? Because they're into media. Like, yeah, we'll meet up next week. Next week became next month. Next month became next year. And then I began to realize, Terraine, your dream is not the dream of others,
Good. Hmm.
right? So I had to
Excellent.
take this thing on my back. And then at that time, I was like, okay, what do I want to talk about? What am I going to do? What am I going to say?
Hmm.
And then I always wore shades.
Okay.
And then I was like, what is it like to know Terraine behind the shades,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Behind the mask, behind the
I
image
love
that you
that.
present out to the world. Aha! I got the name of the show now. So initially what I did was
Okay.
I
I
used to go
didn't
to
know
the gym.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's how it came about, right? So in the beginning, I used to actually interview with my shades on, part of the gimmick in my
Okay.
backyard, way
Yeah.
back when. Don't No one looked at those videos. Those videos are just terrible. But I reached out to the gym community because I was at the gym a couple times, knew a couple personal trainers.
Okay.
And then when I started hearing their story why they got to the gym, I was like, wow, some of these guys that are like 6 foot tall, strong, muscular, 5'7", strong, muscular, a lot of them were bullied. A lot of them were teased, just like you and I were teased, right? A lot of them
Hmm.
were
Yeah.
awkward.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
people started to really respond to those messages, those stories, because you're like, wow, here's this person that could lift 200 pounds, 300 pounds, 400
Mhm.
pounds.
Yeah.
And the reason that they got there is because they didn't want to feel weak because they were made to feel weak
Yes.
for so many years. And then I shifted from that into the overall mental health and how it impacts different types of relationships. And when
Yeah.
I did that, that's where it really took off with women in general, women over
Hmm.
35, which is my key demographic,
Sure.
because they want to hear about how does menopause impact this? How does my mental health impact this? How does my weight? How does being bullied in school? How does my children? How does this? And I was like, okay. I got a microphone. I started to put it in people's faces, right? And I was so aggressive with it, like at the grocery store, at the museum, everywhere. I was like, my name is Terraine and I have this podcast Behind the Shades. Here it is. Do you like to be a guest, talk about something you've overcome in your life? And they're like, really? I was like, yeah, here's my show. I used to play it on them, right?
Love
So
it.
that's
Okay.
how it all started out because I realized then if you put a microphone in front of someone's face, we all have a story that we're dying to tell. Sometimes you just don't have the courage or the means to do so.
Yeah, I love that. I just love that. So how long have you been doing this behind the shades?
I've been doing it for about 3 years, and I remember it like was absolutely yesterday. And I sometimes say to myself, what if I did this earlier on? And then I was like, you know what, Terrain, your training has let
Hmm.
you know that you were to do this exactly when you did it
Yes.
because you've met the people that you're supposed to meet, like you,
Yeah.
Michelle, and
Oh,
you've developed into something that is much more than you. And I've loved it ever since. So 2022 is when I started.
okay. And that's awesome. And I have listened to some of your episodes, not mine, not the one where I was a guest, but the ones with others. And you just have a way of getting to the heart of things quickly. Like you don't meander around, you just ask the questions. And I think people really appreciate that because, as you said, people are dying to tell their stories. They just don't have a platform. And if you gave them a microphone on a stage, they would be like, a deer in headlights. So you give them a comfortable place setting, so to speak, of sharing their story, sharing their struggles. How did they manage this? And, I just love what you're doing. So, do you have any parting wisdom? Because I love this conversation from the beginning, as I always do with you. But do you have any parting notes of wisdom, just wisdom bombs that you can drop on the viewers?
Yes, yes. I wrote something on Facebook recently, 2 days ago, just to thank 2024 for teaching me many, many lessons. And I want to leave this with everyone. Each year, look at it as a mentorship. A year is the teacher and you're the student. Understand what you've learned, remember what you've learned, and take it into the next year and make the necessary changes so those lessons do not go unacknowledged. And another thing is that I want each and everyone listening to know that you are worthy. And what do I mean by worthy? I mean that you are worthy to love yourself and you are worthy to search and only accept peace and happiness. Don't think you have to compromise yourself for the bad behaviors of other people. If there's anyone around you that makes you feel anxious just by their presence, or here's a better test, look at your phone, go through your phone book, and scan each name in your phone book or in your phone.
Mhm.
If you can't come up with a positive feeling of that number, the question should be is that why is that person still able to contact you or why are you still contacting them? Or to be more specific, if your first memory of the person that you're looking at their phone number of is of them complaining or bringing drama into your life or something along those lines, it's time to leave that in the past because you cannot be a new you with old parts.
Oh, I love that. And that's a biblical principle too. But you can't put new wine into old wineskins or else they'll burst. And so are you in favor of blocking people? Like the people that you've just mentioned, are you in favor of just not taking their calls or just because you can erase somebody's contact and then they can still call you. So are you in favor of blocking?
Socially, block them from the earth.
Okay, like on your phone, do you think that blocking,
No,
because
no.
there's that blocking feature. Do you do
You
that or
you
do you
can.
just say, okay, I'm not going to answer their calls?
You can. So what I recommend is I don't recommend blocking a person unless the person is being belligerent or aggressive.
Okay.
Right? Like I have an aggressive friend that I had to remove the number and block them, and they're being verbally aggressive.
Oh,
So what I mean by that is I mean like swearing, f bombs, this and that.
oh.
So you don't want to be in that situation because you don't know how far it's going to go. And these days, you really don't know who's prone to commit a violent act. What I
True.
recommend is a conversation where you let the person know. We're adults. So let's start with we're all going to behave like adults, right? If the person has demonstrated previous behavior of acting like a child,
Yes.
then don't have an adult conversation. Say,
Yeah.
Mrs. Friend, Mr. Friend, I'm taking my life in a different direction. And as part of this direction that I'm taking my life in, I don't think I can accommodate the type of relationship that you and I had or the friendship,
I love
right?
that. That's such a grown-up statement.
Yeah. That takes it away from them. You're not blaming them. You're just saying that I'm doing this, I'm growing, I made this decision versus you're a
Excellent.
bad person, you're a jerk, you know what, you're
Yeah.
cheating on your wife all this time and I can't real be a part of that. That might be the reason.
Yeah.
Right? That
Yeah.
might be the real reason, but we're going to say it a bit differently because
Yeah.
I was speaking to someone, Michelle, and they're telling me that their friend is cheating on their husband. I was like, oh, that's unfortunate. And the person's like, yeah, you know what? I can't believe they're doing this and that. So I asked them the question. I was like, why are you friends with that person? Like, well, they're this and that. I was like, oh, okay. So they're still a good person, even though they cheat. They're like, yeah, perfect. Okay.
Okay.
So the next time you're in a relationship, tell the person that they can cheat on you because they're a good person, because you accept cheaters. Like, well, I was like, no, there's no well.
Yeah. I
Right?
love that. Yes.
Right. If you're justifying it by saying that they're a good person because they
Hmm.
cheat, we want to date good people. Send
Hmm.
us the cheaters.
Yeah,
Right? Right?
exactly.
So
No,
I
that
want
makes
people to,
total sense.
yeah, I want people to understand that you don't need to justify or validate this bad behavior. Just make sure that have this conversation, put some distance between you and them. And I promise you, you will find how much more peace you have
Mm.
when it's not being drained by those who, for some reason, just can't get peace.
Yeah, absolutely. Does that now I'm going in I'm saying goodbye, but I'm asking more questions. So does that include a workplace situation? Would you, if you have toxic coworkers, say, for instance, if a person has that, when does the time come for that person to say, you know what? This is draining me. I don't like coming into work because of this thing. And so I'm going to go find another job, which is a stressor, which is quite a big deal for a lot of people finding out, getting trained in new stuff, new company, and all that. So it's quite a life transition. But what do you say then? Like, based on what you just said previously, does that apply to the workplace? Because in a professional environment or a corporate environment, it's not always proper to say to have grown up conversations because they might not be grown up people you're talking to.
Well, the workplace is probably going to be one of the most, if not the most toxic relationship you'll ever have in your life, potentially.
Hmm.
So a lot of people at work are children. And the reason why I say that they're children is like, it's just like raising children. You give them an incentive to perform better. I'll give you this candy, you perform this way. You
Hmm.
behave properly, you can stay up later and watch this movie. I'll give you these treats, right? So what is the treat? The treat is money.
Yeah.
Be nice, you get a paycheck. Be nicer to me, kiss my butt, you get a promotion, you get a pay increase, right? So the structure in a lot of ways is very like raising children. But when it comes to handling people who are maybe toxic or people who you don't get along with at work, if it's something you can tolerate and still be balanced,
Mm.
then that's fine because as adults, we're always going to deal with conflict and stress. It's how we
Mhm.
manage it.
Yeah.
Now, if it's leaving you imbalanced or if you're finding that it's impacting you outside of your job, then you have to make a change. And by change is that either you have to leave the job, either have to change that job, don't
Hmm.
leave it before you find another one, or you
Yeah.
need to maybe go in a different department. I've been in jobs where
Okay.
it's been toxic, right?
Okay.
And probably the most toxic aspect of a job is what? The boss. So I've had toxic coworkers, I've toxic bosses. So what I've done is I've removed myself from those situations. My pet peeve between you and I, Michelle, and everyone listening, is that overly emotional people who can't regulate their emotions themselves irritates me.
Hmm.
Probably a trigger at this point. So what I try
Yeah.
to do is I try to limit my interactions
Mm.
with people like that because I think people like that are growing in numbers and I think they're becoming more unregulated, right?
Yeah.
So for me is that I try to make sure that you distance yourself from people that's going to put you in those situations because remember, the person who is toxic, they're toxic at work, they're toxic at home, they're toxic at the grocery store, they're toxic on the toilet. You're the person who is searching for peace.
Hmm.
Their version of peace is being toxic because they get a thrill.
Yeah.
Despite what they say, they
Mhm.
get a thrill out of spreading the toxicity around people,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So these are the people that will insulate themselves with empaths
Mm.
or people who always want to fix people. So you find a lot of older women being trapped in situations like this
Yeah. Yeah.
because they're like, well, I see the potential in him, well, you're treating him like your child,
Hmm.
right? And then
Yeah.
we have another conflict when they get into a relationship. They're like, why are you treating this man like that? We've talked about this where
Yes.
you have these women who are paying for Airbnbs and flights for their friends because they're like, well, he's just down on his luck. Like, what? You don't even pay for your husband's flights,
Come on,
right?
man.
Your husband pays for you so you can pay for a man that's down in the dumps because he chooses to be. Anyways, so
No.
that's where I tell people make sure it's all about your peace and happiness, and the person responsible for your peace and happiness is you. Don't let anyone take that away from you.
That is so excellent and such sage advice. And my final question before we end this is, do you do coaching? Do you do relationship coaching? Is it for men and women or both? Or, tell me just a little bit about that if you do that.
I do both. So what I coach men and women. So currently right now I'm mentoring about three ladies.
Mhm.
I call them ladies because they're all over the age of 50.
Okay.
And I feel good
Thank you
because they're
very
learning
much.
from me. Yeah, you're welcome. You know what? They've all found love after coaching me, and I'm very, very blessed because they all three felt that love was only for a certain age group,
Mhm.
20 to 40, right? They're like, well, Terraine, I'm old, I can't find love. Love? What are you talking about? Love has no expiry.
Yeah.
So I work with men and women. Right now
Okay.
I'm working with three ladies. We're
Okay.
finding love. And what I do is I make sure that they stay balanced, not only in their romantic relationships, but their interpersonal relationships as well. And that extends to work. That's why I can speak to these different areas because help them find balance because sometimes I'm speaking to the ladies now, but
Hmm.
this applies to the men as well. So what I'll say is sometimes people who are out of relationships for a long enough period of time, they
Hmm.
forget how they work and
Hmm.
all they know is how to interact with themselves. And they think that the way you interact with yourself is the way you interact with other people and is not the same. So
Oh,
that's
that's
where I
excellent.
help people in
Okay.
that way.
Okay, that is so excellent to hear because yes, when I've always determined as a mature woman and I've been around this, like they're so self-focused and they're so used to being alone. And you do get used to being alone because you do think that love has an expiration date and it's expired on you and you're done. And so it's just like, but they feel so trapped because they can't get out, but their whole world revolves around them. And I've never wanted to be that. Like, all I can talk about is myself. All I can talk about is my world and my uh routine and my. And people aren't generally interested in that. They want a two-way conversation where you're asking about them, and genuinely asking about them, not just to get back to your stuff, but to really have a positive, healthy interchange. And that, I'm just like, I don't ever want to be like that. And I think that awareness will help me not do that. But a lot of women they're so desperate for connection, especially 40 and above, that they'll just accept anything in that place. And I don't think that's right.
I agree. I agree 100%. And it's a difficult place to be in because most divorces, most people in that generation were likely married at some point or in a very long-term relationship.
Hmm.
Most divorces happen around the 10-year mark, so probably around the age of 40.
Okay.
So you have people who are trying to re-enter the dating market when dating apps wasn't a part of it, and now it's 10, 15 years later. They're older, they may have children. So it goes back, right? So the way they look at themselves or they see their identity
Yeah.
before the divorce, before the breakup is vastly different now. So I'm very blessed to be able to help women find love after that age because it's a very
Right.
important demographic to find love in.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you approach men differently? And I know we said we were going to end this what like 10 minutes ago, but I want to follow this, before we finally end. But do you find that men uh you have to counsel them or coach them differently because they have men brains as opposed to female brains?
Yes, yes. So the way I coach men is vastly different. So I'll give you one key difference is that when I'm coaching women, I ask them, give me five things that you don't like or you don't want in a partner. Versus men, I guess say, give me five things that you do want,
Okay.
right? Because women, based on the personality types, women are more prone to negative thoughts.
Hmm.
So meet them where they are. Tell me what you don't
Okay.
like. Tell me what you hate about him. Oh, Terraine, I hate that he's a mama's boy. I hate that I have to do his laundry. Tell me more. Like, what else do you hate, right?
Okay.
Versus men would be more logical. That's more of a masculine trait, right?
Yes,
So I'll
it
say,
is.
okay, give me five things you want in a dream girl. Well, Terraine, I want her to be slim and fit. I'm like, okay, tell me more, right? You want it to be sexy too, right? Oh yeah, sexy long hair, yeah, perfect, right? I'm building, right? You ever
Okay.
been to like a Build-A-Bear shop? I'm building their
Yes.
spouse, right? You know what? Like build them and build them
Yes.
up. So that's one key area. What I found
Okay.
is that women would be very specific in what they don't like. So I just say, okay, the opposite is true, right? You don't
Yeah.
want them to be mama's boy. So you want them to be someone that steps up, that takes the lead, so on and so forth, right? Even though if you're going to go to a woman and say that, oh, you want someone to take the lead? No, that's toxic. Okay, fine. You want someone to not be a pushover, walkover. Yeah, yeah, that's what I want. Same thing, different language. So that's one way.
Yes.
With the men now, what I say is that when they come up and they say, and they're very looks heavy, blonde
Okay.
hair, big tits, big ass, big this, big that. I was like, okay, perfect. So now that's what you want, right? I was okay. So now I'm going to test that. So do you know what the theory of of the three sixes is? Trent, I don't know what that is. This is what it is. Are you 6 feet? Do you have at least 6 inches in the pants? And do you have six? Do you earn six figures? Like, well, I don't have any of that. I was okay. If you don't have those three things, you can't get all of this. You're average. This person is going to be average, right? Because average people get married. That's how specific I am. I'm not the type of person that says, okay, no, you know what, you can get the basketball player. Or I can say that, you know what, you can get Angelina Jolie or you can get the runway model. I was
Okay.
like, no, let's set realistic expectations. So
Okay.
with the women, I do it from outside inward, and from the men, I do it inward outward.
Oh, that's excellent because that's, just to kind of wrap up and based on a previous conversation we've had on your podcast is that and with the men and what you just said, if how they're drawn into relationship deception is you have this bombshell, this drop dead gorgeous 25-year-old, and maybe you're mid 40s or 50s, you're balding, you're average looking, and they're saying they love you to the end of the world and back, and that they make all these promises. Men gulp at that, and they have no idea that she just after your wallet, after your credit cards, after what she can get, monetarily. So, you know,
Yeah, look at it like this, Michelle. A lot of men who get scammed by women like that,
mhm.
those same women rejected them in high school and college,
Yes,
right? So
very
you have to
true.
look at it
Yeah.
from a male perspective, right? It's like,
Yes.
I finally get my high school crush
Yes.
20, 30 years later, right? I'm going to
Yes.
take full advantage of this. There's a meme that goes around there that shows five beautiful girls,
Yeah.
blonde, brunette, redhead on a yacht. They're like, look at me on this yacht. And then underneath that meme is like, it's so you have the top of it, five women on the yacht. Look at me on my yacht. And then underneath that same meme, it's the five owners of the yacht. Fat, old, bald, sloppy looking men, right? Those men likely are the same men that those type of girls said no to when they were 19, 20, 21. Now
Yeah.
that they're 51 and they got money, they're going to make up for lost time, right?
Yeah.
And that's how men think.
Wow. Yeah, that's worth another conversation to at another time. But I have thoroughly enjoyed your nuggets of wisdom. You always have so much uh, just insight. You have so much insight to share and just surprises sometimes. And I'm really appreciative for you being a guest today. Thank you, Terraine.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. It's an absolute pleasure to always speak with you, and I look forward to our future conversations.
Yeah, me too. And how can people reach you if they want to connect further with you?
Absolutely. So you can go to my website, www.behindtheshadesinterviews.ca, as well as you can email me at behindtheshadesinterviews@gmail.com. Everything is all listed there, and I look forward to chatting with you guys in the future.
Oh, that's awesome. And I will put those in the show notes and you can connect with Terraine and maybe get some coaching and take your life and relationships to higher level. Thank you. And for all those who have listened to this episode, I am sure you know something that you didn't know before. And until next time, thank you for watching another episode of Winning Proof Unscripted.